The VCSE Barometer survey. The sector's regular temperature check. Informed by VCSE organisations for VCSE organisations nationwide. Unlock insights for impact.
So hello and good morning and welcome everybody, and thank you very much for coming to this session. My name's Daniel King. I'm Professor of Organisational Studies at Nottingham Trent University and part of the VCSE Observatory. They've been running the Barometer alongside Pro Bono Economics as well. So yeah, we'll begin sort of now because I think we've had quite a lot of people come in. So thank you very much for people coming in. Just as a bit of housekeeping then, if you don't mind keeping your microphone muted unless you obviously want to speak. If you did want to raise a question, we'd like to make this quite interactive, then please use your digital hand. We will have some sort of opportunities for you to interact as well with Jamboards and other things like that coming on. We're going to record the presentation element, but we will also for the Q&A bit a little bit later, then we won't record that, just so that people can be as honest as possible, but we will write up in broad terms sort of what the discussion entails as well. So yeah, if you have any objections to be recorded, please let us know. But yeah, so yeah, we'll begin. So welcome, and yeah, just like to talk through the latest findings of the barometer then. So this was our 6th wave of our quarterly barometer that ourselves at Nottingham Trent University and the VCSE Observatory have been running alongside Pro Bono Economics. As you may well know then, the key goals of the barometer survey is to provide insights for policymakers and practitioners trying to provide real-time data. So we aim to get out the reports and the dashboard and the other material as soon as we possibly can from when the barometer survey closed as well. The core idea is it's a quarterly temperature check of the sector, just getting us a pulse check of what's going on across the sector. We began this particular version of it in November 2022, and this is the 6th wave then. So the data we're reporting on was from the 10th of April to the 1st of May. And then obviously we have got our reports and things like that. It's an all online survey. We developed this in conjunction with Pro Bono Economics, and we've got Beth from PBE coming to speak fairly soon. And we have 14 national organisations as well who help shape up the questions and the topics and to help work out what's relevant. You'll see then that we're trying to disseminate the findings as well. Be really interested in any feedback and thoughts you've got from today's session and the reports and things as well. So we have a report, and my colleague Julia's put that in the chat, the links to the report, and we have an interactive dashboard as well where you can click on there as being demonstrated, and to get access to that dashboard as well. And that's a way of drilling into some of the detail about what's in there, and you can filter by things like organisational size or location against some of the questions to get a little bit more detailed understanding about some of the material that we'll present to you today as well. Just a quick headlines of what some of the key things from wave 6. Then you'll see really there's significant challenges that have been coming. One of the key ones is just organisations struggling to keep up with demand. So that has continued across all of our waves really to be one of the top 3 concerns, is just rising demand. Well, whilst inflation may have fallen actually or be lower, it doesn't mean that prices have come down. It just means that they're increasing on a slower rate. So the cost of living crisis is still very much with us. And I think that has significant implications on lots of voluntary community social enterprise organisations. 2 in 3 organisations saw an increase in demand over the last 3 months, and expect that to carry on over the next 3 months and 1 in 3 expect a shortfall in meeting demands as well. So actually a large percentage of organisations are really struggling to meet the demand that is facing them. Lots of increase in working hours, whereas nearly half of the organisations saying that they're facing recruitment difficulties, and means that actually the implications are employees are working longer. Let's think about the consequences of that for things like well-being, staff retention, and 4 in 10 have reported an increase in unpaid time contribution by volunteers over the last 12 months or so as well. So when people have got volunteers, they are doing a lot more, which in some senses is a positive thing, but also presents lots of challenges as well, and ongoing financial pressures. So two out of 3 organisations reported income as a top concern as well. And almost half the organisations that responded to the latest wave have said that they're using their reserves just to cover costs. And obviously that raises significant sustainability challenges as well. If we move on to the next slide, so you'll see then that we have significant challenges in terms of recruitment and retention as well. And it's income is one of the top 3 concerns that is there over time as well. I'm going to hand over to my colleague Ben, who's going to talk through some of these overall significant findings. So Ben, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so as Daniel said, one of the questions that we ask in each wave of the barometer is what the top concerns are. So in the past 2 waves, the top 3 concerns have been the same. So income generation is a bit of an obvious one. There's around 70+% of people who say that every single time. Volunteer recruitment comes in second place at 44%, and that's swapped around with increase in demand, which is reduced by 2% since wave 5, but is still reported by 4 in 10 organisations. So on service demand, as we pulled out in the key findings, 2 in 3 organisations report an increase in service demand in the past 3 months. Similar proportion expect the same again for the next 3 months. And only 2% expect it to decrease over the next 3 months. So 1 in 3 organisations expect to fall short in meeting demand, and the majority of organisations, just over half, expect to meet demand but with limited or no capacity. Only 9% expect to meet demand with significant spare capacity. So there's a bit of a mixed picture in terms of financial position. The largest proportion of organisations said that the financial position has stayed the same over the past 3 months, and a similar proportion of organisations have said that there's been a slight change, both better and worse, in the financial position. And this is similar over the next 3 months in terms of expectations as well. 44% expect no changes to their financial position over the next 3 months. So almost 3 in 4 medium and large organisations report that rising costs have caused a deteriorated financial position. So even though rising costs are affecting all organisations, 3/4 of medium and large organisations in wave 6 reported deterioration, compared to 58% of those in small organisations. And these rising costs have resulted in the unplanned use of financial reserves and an increase in service prices for half of all organisations. And these were by far the biggest consequences to rising costs for organisations. And in relation to financial reserves, almost half of organisations said they were using reserves to meet operating costs, a figure that increases for medium and large organisations and decreases for small organisations. So just over half of organisations report no change in the number of paid staff or volunteers over the past 3 months. There are no substantial changes really, although 1 in 4 organisations report a small increase in paid staff, and 1 in 3 report a small increase in volunteers. Despite this, volunteer recruitment is consistently cited as a top 3 concern for organisations, while 45% of organisations report having staff recruitment difficulties. And so those organisations that report recruitment difficulties are also facing other challenges, with almost half saying that their employees are working increased hours and that some operations had to be paused. 1 in 3 organisations said that they couldn't meet demand at all as a result of recruitment difficulties. So back over to you, Daniel.
That's great, Ben. And yeah, we'd like just some of your thoughts and ideas around some of this. One of the things we were wondering, and you'll see here, there's a link to the Jamboard on the slide, but also hopefully we'll put that link in the chat as well. Yeah, we just have. So one of the things we'd like you to be able to do is just say a little bit, and if you're finding the Jamboard a little bit difficult, please either just raise your hand on this and speak, or put questions in the chat. But we're really interested in see how you've adapted your delivery service model. So how are you doing things in response to some of the things that are going on there? So if you're an organisation that's experiencing increased demand, challenges of recruitment and retention of, we've said personnel, so we mean volunteers and we mean paid members of staff as well, or difficulties for funding. What are you doing in that situation? What are the sort of challenges you're facing, and what are the ways that you as an organisation are responding as well, particularly if that is something that you're facing where there's increase in demand, there's challenges for recruitment, or there's challenges for funding as well. And that seems to be what lots of organisations are saying. And we'd just like to have a sense, if you can, about what are some of the ways that you're responding to this. So we've created this Jamboard, which if you've not used one before, and I don't know, Ben, if you can screen share onto the Jamboard itself. It's basically a blank board, and it's got some little sticky notes at the side, and you can add things into that. Overall, if you are struggling with that Jamboard and it is a bit difficult to navigate, there you go, you can see live, and it gives on the side their little sticky note that you can create. Yeah, so if you can write things. Go on, Ben.
Yeah, if you just click on the sticky note, and then it'll come up with a little screen where you can type whatever you want and press save, and then you can just move it around, make it smaller or bigger. So yeah, if you just click on that sticky note and let us know your thoughts, that would be perfect.
So we'll give people a few minutes to do that. And yeah, Mark's just raised the question, which is a really good one, about the trends, and do we think overall across all of the waves things are getting worse or things are getting better, and what the current situation is. And I think Beth or Ben, I don't know whether you've got any thoughts overall about some of the challenges and the overall picture that we're seeing. We're going to talk in a minute about volunteering, and obviously we've just done a cut over the last 3 months or so as well. But yeah, Ben, in terms of the overall trends, what do you think we're seeing?
In terms of demand, there's a sustained, reported increase in service demand over time. That's never shifted over the past kind of 12 to 15 months, which sort of indicates that accumulation effect of increased demand with a stagnation in the financial position, presents significant challenges to organisations. Obviously, without that baseline of saying, whether service demand is a good thing, because it might be a good thing for some organisations and a bad thing for others, we're kind of making conclusions ourselves. But as you were saying at the start, with the cost of living crisis and more people using certain services, that's presenting a strain on organisations who are facing difficulties in terms of recruitment of paid staff and volunteers.
Yeah, and Patrick made a very salient point in the chat about how inflation for different income groups is very much variable, and as the comment says, that there's been major increases in quite a lot of items, and that changes the nature of things as well. And olive oil and chocolate have risen a lot, but they're not necessarily always essential items as well. And I think when inflation is talked about on the news, it's often talked about very general terms, but actually people experience that very differently, and that might have knock-on effects in terms of increasing demand on organisations and the challenges therefore that are raised as well, or the challenges of fundraising and other such things. So yes, I think we talk about these things in very big overall terms, but you're right, Patrick. In terms of just the Jamboard, then that will remain open. So we're really interested in just having your views on that. We'll put our email address into the chat as well, and we would be very keen to see any thoughts and feelings you've got around this sort of topic area, because I think understanding in real terms how organisations are responding to these challenges is part of one of the things that we're looking to do as well. So if we move on to the next slide then. Our particular topic for this wave, and we always have a core set of questions and a topical set of questions as well, is volunteering. And we just wanted to, in this one, we're comparing our third wave to our sixth wave, which were more or less a year apart. And if we go on to the next slide, here's some of the key headlines. So 4 in 10 organisations said that they lack sufficient number of volunteers to meet their primary objectives. So that's the same as last year, which raises a significant challenges, particularly those organisations that are very much dependent on volunteers as well. And volunteer recruitment has been cited as a top 3 concern over every wave over the last year. So this really is one of the reasons why we thought this was a significant topic, and we wanted to better look at that. So there's a major ongoing concerns. The campaigns to try to recruit volunteers is a really significant issue, with 6 in 10 organisations saying that they found it difficult, which is just raised very slightly from last year. So basically carries on being a big challenge, and a lack of time is one of the things that people cite as a regular challenge. And retention is also difficult as well, with 1 in 3 organisations saying it's difficult to finding volunteer retention difficult, and 4 in 10 saying that there's been an increase in unpaid hours by volunteers as well, which has gone up by about 7%, so quite significant. We want to put that in a wider context. So Ben's done a really good job looking over the last 20 years of that data. And this is taken from some national surveys, and we've pulled this data together. The proportion of individuals volunteering according to 2 of the big national surveys that have happened over the last 20 years or so. And the point of putting this slide up is it just shows, I think, a story of a gradual decline across lots of different types of volunteering over the last 20 years. And so we're going to present now some figures of what's been happening now in comparison to about a year ago. And really, I think the major story is that this is ongoing challenges, but put that in a wider context over the last 20 years of actually a real decline, according to national surveys, of people volunteering as well. Little peaks and troughs across that, but overall significant challenges. So I think what we're going to see is a picture where there's continual difficulty, which raises questions about what do we do to respond to that as well. So Ben, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. Yeah, so compared to wave 3, fewer organisations are reporting decreases in volunteer numbers, while more organisations are reporting increases in volunteer numbers. So, that is a more positive outlook than it was last year. Whether or not it's a positive outlook is to be determined. And this is an outlook that is consistent across a range of demographic groups, including older, younger, disabled, and Black, Asian, and ethnic minority groups as well that we measured. So despite the very marginal improvement in volunteer numbers compared to last year, 42% of organisations said that the unpaid time contributed by volunteers had increased over the last 12 months. And like we said in the key findings section, that's an increase of 7% from wave 3. And so 61% of organisations have found recruiting volunteers difficult, which is up 2% from wave 3. And only 11% of organisations find recruitment easy, compared with 9% in wave 3. So this chart shows the barriers to volunteer recruitment over the past 12 months. So the bars in red represent wave 3, and those in blue represent wave 6. And so you can see the 2 standalone blue bars on the end. Those were selections that were only available in wave 6. So we can't say whether these have increased or decreased since wave 3. However, we can say that these 2 bars, the public's lack of time and interest, They were the most commonly reported in wave 6. In terms of those that we can compare, 11% fewer organisations report a low response to volunteer adverts as a barrier to volunteer recruitment, but this remains a barrier for just under half of all organisations. Again, this chart shows recruitment methods used by organisations over the past 12 months. Bars in red represent wave 3, blue represent wave 6. So word of mouth, which you can see was only asked in wave 6, is by far the dominant recruitment method. It's used by 84% of organisations, but we can't directly measure whether this has changed from wave 3. What we can tell is that across many of the other recruitment methods, fewer are being used compared to wave 3. So there's notable decreases in, for example, social media usage, which is down from 77% in wave 3 to 65% in wave 6, and in-person events, which is down from 62% in wave 3 to 47% in wave 6. So although respondents consider retaining volunteers less of a concern than recruiting them in terms of the question we ask about the top 3 concerns, 32% found retention difficult over the past 12 months. That's down 1% from wave 3, compared to 18% that find it easy. So the 2 biggest barriers to volunteer retention remain the same as in wave 3, but the positions have reversed. So in wave 6, 70% of organisations said that family and caring responsibilities, which is up 14% since wave 3, was a barrier to retention. And 65% said that work responsibilities, which is down 7% from wave 3, has been a barrier to retention of volunteers in the past year. Another thing to note is with an increasingly ageing population, 43% of respondents cite age and longevity of service as a barrier to retention. And so the most common retention benefit, which was, a very similar proportion of organisations said it in wave 3 to wave 6, is training and development opportunities, 74%, down 1% from, well, less than 1% from wave 3, and payment of out-of-pocket expenses, which is down 7% from wave 3. One that we asked only in wave 6 was whether organisations offer free food and drinks as a retention benefit, and 61% of respondents said that they did. So slightly fewer organisations say that they're offering flexible volunteering as a retention benefit in wave 6 compared to wave 3, but this could be because this is considered more of standard practice now rather than an incentive. So this one of our questions asked whether organisations had sufficient volunteers to meet the primary objectives, and you can see very similar proportions in both waves. So around 4 and 10 said that they had insufficient volunteers to meet their objectives. So we explored the differences between these 2 groups, the sufficient and insufficient group, and we found that a substantially higher proportion of those with insufficient volunteers reported difficulties with recruitment and retention, despite using more recruitment methods and also offering a higher number of retention benefits than those in the sufficient group. What we also found was that the insufficient group were also more likely to report a decline in the unpaid hours contributed by their volunteers, whereas in the sufficient group, they were more likely to report an increase. And so I'll just hand over to Beth now, who's going to run through some of the differences in organisation size.
Hi Ben, thank you. Hi everyone, I hope you're all well and have a good morning. My name is Beth Kitson. I'm one of the research and policy analysts at PBE, if I haven't met you before. I'm just going to run through a bit of extra detail from our analysis of the particular topical questions on volunteering. So as I say, I'm from Pro Bono Economics. We are a think tank that works alongside Nottingham Trent, and we use economics to empower the social sector and to increase wellbeing across the UK. So one thing that we've been particularly interested in is looking at the differentiation of experiences of the sector by size. So looking at the barometer results from looking at medium, large and small charities. And what we've really found just from looking at this volunteering data is that it is small charities, which we know make up about 80% of the sector and are much more likely to be reliant on volunteering, who are struggling the most as a result of this volunteering decline that we've seen from Ben's fantastic graph earlier today. And we're seeing that volunteering recruitment challenges, it has been likely to be worsening for small charities rather than improving. Almost 2/3, 65% of small charities reported recruitment difficulties over the last 12 months, compared with 58% last year. And while we know that large charities, as you can see on this chart here, are also struggling with volunteer recruitment, there have been some signs that they are overcoming the challenge faster. Over 4 in 10, 42% of large charities reported volunteer recruitment difficulties in May this year, compared with over half this time last year, which is suggesting some signs of improvement. And it's been really interesting to see this. If you go back a couple of waves, another one of our reports dug into a little bit the idea of this tale of two sectors with distinct differences between how large and small charities have been equipped to grapple with high demand and continual financial challenges over the year. So this slide here is just goes into a little bit more detail about the internal barriers faced by small charities, such as short-term funding and perhaps a lack of internal capacity or resources, which are likely adding to external pressures, pulling away the opportunity to recruit volunteers. And we all know that volunteers, although they're unpaid, are not cost-free, and using volunteering effectively takes resources to manage, oversee, and support those that are giving up their time. And notably, and similarly with what we found with Ben's data there, just 8% of small charities responding to the barometer reported having a dedicated volunteer manager, compared with almost 4 in 10 of large charities and over 1/4 of medium-sized charities. So thinking here about volunteer coordinators who are devoted to recruiting and managing volunteers, this may be a way to ensure volunteer wellbeing, avoiding burnout, and ensuring not only volunteer recruitment, but it's also volunteer retention. So we're just thinking here a little bit about the kind of options and opportunities that in this ever-changing world where, as Ben said, people are constantly being pulled in so many different directions, the sector could perhaps adapt slightly to think about volunteer recruitment and retention. Potential volunteers, we know, want to see flexible opportunities and assurances that they can give back to their communities in small ways at first, which may be a way of not overwhelming that already stretched time. What's been really reassuring and really interesting from looking at the qualitative data that's coming through from the barometer is that we're seeing that there are already interesting initiatives springing up to attract and retain volunteers seeking out flexible volunteering. For example, one medium-sized charity responding to the barometer has introduced a bite-sized volunteering approach, which uses social media, videos and e-newsletters to allow volunteers to respond to what the charity calls often last-minute calls to action, which have been increasing in demand. And notably, the charity has said that people who have never considered volunteering before are attracted by these calls for community action. So what we're seeing here is there may be a way of looking at this graph which suggests that only 1/4 of small charities currently offer flexible volunteering. Perhaps this is something where more could be done to build flexibility into volunteering opportunities. This graph also shows that reaching out to other centres, to looking at other other local volunteering bodies and infrastructures could also be an opportunity to support volunteering and to get some kind of coordination going. But really, as Ben said, and as Daniel pointed out earlier, if we're thinking about kind of the wider context, this really matters. Importantly, we know that time pressures at work, family and caring responsibilities have continuously been highlighted as key barriers to people, both in volunteering recruitment, but also in continuing to volunteer. Small charities surveyed have suggested that people are giving up volunteering with them in order to care for others, with almost 2/3 reporting it as a crucial barrier to volunteering retention. So 64% of small charities have highlighted this, compared with half of large charities. Over half of small charities have also reported that they are experiencing volunteering leaving because of age and longevity, and almost 1/3 of small charities are reported losing volunteering due to health issues. And what is really important to kind of emphasise here is that this really seems to be a complex web of all these different factors are combining to see this kind of difficulty within the volunteering space, where would-be volunteers are really challenged. People, as this quote says here, people are taking on more work. Older people are caring for their grandchildren more to save their children money, and this has a knock-on effect for the main cohort of older retired volunteers. And really what we came away from looking at this round of the barometer wave was just thinking about how volunteering is not immune from other wider labour market concerns surrounding issues with infrastructure, the cost of care, long-term sickness impacting what we call economic inactivity, and volunteering really needs to be taken seriously when we are considering wider labour market concerns.
And so we were interested also in your views, and we'd get at the end of the report, and there's a link there to the report and to a Jamboard as well. If there you can see us being highlighted, some ideas of ways of working through this, and that these are not like quick fixes and simple solutions, otherwise everybody would know what to do and had found them by now. But there are some thoughts and suggestions there. We'd work with Gethin Williams, who's a expert in volunteering and has done lots of work for DCMS and the Spirit of 2012 and many other things in terms of volunteering. So there's some thoughts there around different ways of engaging. We've got a Jamboard there as well that we would be very interested in you putting forward, and also just having an open chat now, really. And we will stop the recording in a moment. But really, we wanted just to see, your thoughts and ideas about what's worked for you, what things that people are trying. These are some of the bits of advice when we've spoken to experts in this area of things that could work. So we've linked what the challenges that have been emerging from the latest wave of the barometer and some things to reflect on, rather than telling you exactly what to do, because as we say, there's no quick fixes and you've all got lots of expertise in this area as well. So there's the Jamboard. We'd really like to do that, but also just like to open this up now really for some questions and thoughts. So just go to the final slide before we do that. Just to say thank you very much. There are contact details, and we will put all of those in the chat as well. But maybe if we stop sharing the presentation, we have got the Jamboard, so it'd be nice if you could screen share maybe, Ben, what's on the Jamboard, but also open it up to...
See where you are in the big picture. Stay ahead of the curve. Join a community of changemakers. Amplify your voice. Drive collaboration and innovation. Sign up for the survey. Have your say. And influence action where it counts. For you. Your input matters.